I'm Abba Shapiro. Welcome to the next Premiere class, Premiere Pro Tips class. This is, we'll get this set up beyond the basic mastering, our masterful editing techniques in Premiere Pro. How many folks here were in the previous session that Jeff and I did, the tips and tricks one? Wow, thank you guys for coming back. That's a lot of folks. How many people were in our full one-day session? Excellent. And then for the happy, good stuff? Excellent. Good. Great. Well, I'm officially presenting this. I convinced Jeff to help me because I cannot switch without him. I can barely function without my twin brother from another mother. So he's hiding, but he's here to help me. So
I'm Teller.
He's Teller today.
I'm Teller.
I'm Penn. But so I want to thank him for doing that. And for those of you in the previous one, maybe about 10, 15%, hopefully less, will be some stuff you may have heard either in yesterday's class or in the previous session. I will try to go through that quickly, but there is a number of people who haven't seen either of the sessions, so I want them to get some of these basic techniques. So bear with me. If you've heard it, I guarantee you'll get some new stuff. As a matter of fact, let's go to the next slide and take a quick look at what we will be covering. I love this. Jeff has a great sense of humor. Because he's hiding behind there, as a matter of fact. You know, he's the angel over my shoulder. So thank you, Jeff. And here we are. This is what the session will cover. This is what the description is. I may cheat a little bit and add some more stuff. I hope to. It's a lot to cover in 75 minutes. We're going to do some keyboard trimming and shortcuts. Go a little bit deeper in some cases than we did in the previous classes, but that's probably where you'll see a little bit of the redundancy with some of the keyboard shortcuts, but they're really helpful stuff. So think of it as reinforcement as opposed to redundancy. We're going to look at applying motion effects, animating something, flying around a still image, or maybe flying something through the screen, basically animating motion animation with the tab. I'm going to create time lapses. I love time lapses. I shoot them. Premiere is amazing at working with time lapses. I'm going to give you some tips on shooting time lapses as well as preparing them to bring into Premiere. And once you see how it's done, you will be hooked on it as well as I am. We're going to look maybe at the text tool. That one I may push to the end because I have some more exciting stuff. How to import a motion graphic, Mogarts, those are the big things. We have a nice one. Color balancing is always big, so we're going to definitely work with that. And then we're going to also apply filters to a clip and show you how you can animate those so you can actually have a filter, for instance, go from sharp to out of focus an image, animate that with keyframes. So that's the general overview of what we're going to attempt to cover in the time we have. I may throw in some extra things if I have the time. I always hope to have the time. Never truly works out. This deck will be available, by the way, for those of you. Do we have the master slide for the location at the end of this?
We do.
We do. So if you've been in either Jeff's and my other classes, it will be the same location.
It's a bit.ly link. Greenberg updates, I think it is, but we'll flash it at the end of the screen.
At the very end, you can
sign
take
up.
a screenshot.
We'll get you all the session notes from all the sessions we do.
And this is just an interesting aside. I've had people in the previous classes ask me how they take the survey. And literally, since we haven't taken a class, we didn't know. To take the survey at the end of any of these classes, just go to the mobile app. At the bottom left-hand corner is survey. Click on that. It will populate to the classes that you have already gone to. So that's how you can take a survey, which we do appreciate because it means we come back next year and we get cake and cookies. Sometime, if we're bad, we just get cake. OK, so there we go. That's the idea of what we're going to cover. Let's go ahead to the next slide.
I want to make sure I can switch to your screen.
And you bring my audio up? Yes, I will ask them to bring up the audio. There is a challenge with audio. I do apologize. Since we have all these rooms here, we get louder, they get louder, they get louder, and then everybody just blows up. I will talk as clearly as I can, and if you can't hear me, please shout out, and the guys in back who are doing an amazing job trying to balance all this will bring me up as much as they can. So, you know, those are the kind of things.
Carlos, can we get some heat on his mic? If he can't be heard, I don't care if they hear him. He needs to be heard. So Abba, talk for a moment.
I will continue talking. Let's go to the next, can we switch it? I know we can't necessarily hear ourselves, but can you hear me much better now? Excellent, thank you so much for that. So that is the overview. Okay, so this is the name of the class. Did I just go backwards or forwards?
You went the right way.
Excellent, okay. So let's go ahead and look at some shortcuts. I'm going to go to the next slide. I'm going to show you some of the keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to show you what they are and why we use them, okay? So the whole idea is that when I cut a show, I cut it fast. I cut it fast, hopefully. I also cut it fat because I just want to get the story in place, get an idea of the footage that I have and the footage that I might need to get, and then I start doing the trimming. And that can be anything from shortening a shot, repositioning a shot, repositioning where a shot starts and ends within the frame, a slip edit and a slide edit. It also may be trimming audio to get a natural flow. And that's really the big thing, and we've emphasized that in a lot of our classes, and so that's some of the reason why, and we're going to revisit and visit that. So that's the idea behind that. Reasons to trim. Okay, this is the first big one. I love this. I will teach this every day if I can and if I have to, because I use this every day. Q and W, tops and tails. If you've been in any of our other classes, you've heard this. If you haven't, you will be amazed and mystified. Let's go ahead and switch to the actual application. So, here we have a timeline.
One sec. There we go.
I threw a bunch of clips in. By the way, we will hopefully get to talk color correction. This was intentionally shot hot, so we could match that. So this is just the rough cut. So if I want to go ahead and trim this, very easy. What we don't want to do is we don't want to go in, have to do slicing and dicing, the cut key, cut something, with a razor blade. Once you've selected with the razor blade, then you have to go ahead, hit your selection key, the V key. It's the home key. I am going to intentionally slow down. I know I'm speaking fast. He will punch me every time I am speaking too fast. That's his primary job, because I get excited and you can only listen at normal speed. Thank you, Jeff. So we don't want to go ahead and hit cut, select the clip, delete the clip, select the space, maybe right-click and ripple delete. There might be times you want to do that, and so never say never, but if you do have a gap, sometimes it's just nice to right-click in that gap. It'll give you the option to ripple delete and close the space. That's an okay thing, but I want to save all of this time.
It's a really common way for you. It's very intuitive to grab that razor blade. But there's a better way to work.
So if I want to trim something at the beginning and the end, and so I have this woman dancing, and I have the feet kicking, it's a little bit long, and then I cut to the wide shot, and then I have her, she's gonna, turn here in a moment, and I want to be able to cut between all of this. So it's a lot easier to play along, see where I want to start, and once I position my playhead, the Q and W key, upper left-hand corner of your keyboard, I just use 2 fingers, and I do this a lot at the very beginning of the edit. Q will cut the very beginning of the clip, anything to the left of the playhead. W will cut anything to the right. Okay, so it's very quick that I can go through and edit something and take out all that extra fat so I can start doing my trimming. This works really, really well with interviews or with long takes. I'm going to go ahead and type in the word interview so I can find my interview shots, and I'm going to show you how I would cut a clip if I needed to trim what she is saying. So while I'm teaching these techniques, I'm going to throw in some side tips because it's very useful, and for those people that have seen me do trimming before, they'll hopefully learn something new. So I want to work with this clip. I'm not going to throw it in my timeline. I want a timeline that perfectly matches the clip. So all I have to do with any clip that I want to just throw into a timeline or a series of clips and I want it to match, I simply select it, right click, and I say make a new sequence from that clip. It will now match perfectly with size, frame rate. Codec doesn't matter these days. It just plays. Look at that. It made a brand new sequence that I can go ahead and I can start watching and cutting. Now, I could do some of this cutting and marking inside my source monitor, but there are times when I have an hour of footage and I just want to get down to the meat and potatoes, or I have a voiceover narration. I do my own voiceover narrations. It takes me an hour of actual recording to get 3 minutes of good takes. So I cut out a lot, and this is where it becomes beneficial. I'm going to hit the backslash key so I can see this in a lot of detail. As a matter of fact, I could even bring it up full screen. I'm going to also make it a little bit taller. I'm going to hit Shift+. It allows me a couple of things. It allows me to actually see where her breaks are, or if there were long breaks. So this is an example of how I might do that. So I could go through and turn the volume on, and we do have volume, but I'm just going to visually look at this. So before she starts talking, I could go ahead, hit Q, cut off the beginning. Now I would use J, K, and L to move to where the next break might be. Okay, so it might be at this point.
They may not hear it. We may need to adjust Premiere to tell it to output correctly through the audio hardware settings. Command, comma.
Yeah, I'm not sending it out. So Command, comma, keyboard shortcut. Opens up my preferences, audio hardware, had a great thing, built-in.
Set it to
output.
Speakers or headphones.
Headphones, no, it's not coming in. Let's not worry about the audio, because I'm going to do this visually.
Okay.
It's for some reason, it's not coming through. It's probably just more challenging with the sound. But if I want to very quickly cut through this, I want to show you some of the techniques that I would use. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I can visually see things I want to cut out. Different ways to do it. These are different editing techniques. I could at this point, knowing that she's finishing speaking, I can't use Q and W at this point, because if I hit Q, it'll kick out the first one. Doesn't help me. If I hit W, it'll kick out the rest of the interview. What I want to do is I do want to do a very quick cut, okay? And to do a cut, I'm not going to go grab that cut tool. Takes too much time. Command K, as in cut. If you can spell cut, you can now use a keyboard shortcut. Command K. So wherever the playhead is parked, Command K now has put in a cut or a splice. I can then use J, K, and L, go to the beginning of where she's talking again, and I hit the Q key, and now it gets rid of that hole. So I can go through very quickly, find gaps visually, or if I'm listening using JKL. JKL is what we use to navigate through a clip. Many of you have heard that. If you're new to Premiere, J plays backwards, L plays forward. These are the letter keys. K is a modifier. It allows you to play in slow motion. So if I hold down the K key, the modifier, and then hit L, I'll play slow motion forward. If I hold the K key down and the J key, now I'm playing backwards in slow motion. Really useful for precise editing. If I want to get more precise, while my hand is on J, K, and L, if I hold the K key down and I just tap L, I'm moving one frame at a time forward. And J is the opposite. I'm going backwards. Multiple taps, fast forward, fast rewind. Useful stuff. Some of you know that. Some of this is new. But what I'm doing is I'm moving to these locations, and then I could hit Command K again to make a splice, go to the next hole very quickly, and then I could hit the W. I do that a lot just to tighten up a narration or a voiceover to work with. Best way to do it. And now I have my audio nicely cut. But there are times when I want to remove something from a clip. I want to show you some other types of edits that can help you to remove chunks without having to go and hit that C key to cut. So I'm going to undo Command Z on a Mac, Control Z, Control Z on Windows. I can do something called a lift edit and an extract edit. How many people have not heard of a lift or an extract edit? You've not heard of it. Excellent. Good, at least 50% of the room. You will love this. I'm going to simply mark an in and out point. This is the important thing. It can work on a clip by itself. It can work on a chunk of clips in your timeline. I mark I for an in point. I go to where I want the edit to be, and I mark O for the out point. I've used J, K, and L, and I and O. I'm emphasizing the keyboard here. Now I want to be able to remove this, okay? I have a couple of options. Next to J, K, and L are two keys, the semicolon key and the apostrophe key. One will do what's called an extract edit. One will do what's called a lift edit. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to hit the apostrophe key directly to the right of J, K, and L. Take a look at what happens. It removed, it did a lift edit. It cut out everything between I and O. This is great if I don't want to change the timing of my sequence. Okay, I want to leave things in place.
It's also significantly less keys than using the blade tool. It means that you can sit back and listen and go, here to here. Make that gone.
I want that to go away. I'm going to hit undo because I want to show you what would happen if instead of using the semicolon, which is immediately to the right of J, K, and L, but the apostrophe, one more over. Okay? We just did what was called a lift edit. An extract edit saves me a step because I want to remove it and I want to close the gap. So I move over to that apostrophe key. I've marked in and out. One keystroke, I've now lifted it out, closed the gap. That's called a extract edit. I never had to move my hand. Is that cool? Is that going to speed up your workflow? Excellent. So that's the whole point. We're going to go through some of these quick and fast things that I do when I go through. But that's the big thing. Command K will cut something in half. Q and W, I can then trim the heads and the tails very quickly. And then I can also mark I and O and do extract edits and lift edits.
Command K, the German for cut.
Yeah.
Don't say it.
Command K, the German for cut. I did it that they misspelled it.
Oh.
Okay. So those are some of the basic ones. By the way, the keyboard shortcuts will be in the deck that you will be able to download. Okay, so if you just want to watch and experience, that's great. If you want to write the notes, that's great also. But that's one of the ways that I start really working with my timeline. Now, of course, if I did a lift edit, okay, I'm going to go ahead, just mark an I, let it play, O, lift edit. I have this gap here. To close gaps, I mentioned it before, 2 ways to do it. You can select the spot and hit delete, undo. I can just also, if my hand's on the mouse already and I'm going to select it, might as well just right click and say ripple delete. Really very useful. What about if I just want to delete a section that already is broken up? I have this soundbite. She said the same thing twice. I'm ready to delete it. I want to make sure I only have one selected. As a matter of fact, just to make it clear, I'm going to remove so you don't see the in and out points. I just want to remove this clip. So what can I do? I can hit delete, but that leaves a space. Now I have to right click. Again, it's all about shaving off one click at a time, because if you can do that on 50 different things, you will edit faster. So instead of deleting it and then closing the space, I can option delete. It removes that clip and closes the gap. Little keystroke savings. And it's all in the basic same area of my keyboard. JKL apostrophe, semicolon, I and O above are very useful. So that's trimming. We mentioned this in an earlier session. I'm not going to show it. I'm going to tell it because some of you, many of you have seen it. When I want to bring something into my timeline, instead of dragging it in, directly under J, K, and L are the comma keys and the period key. They allow me to do an insert and an overwrite edit. As a matter of fact, I said I wasn't going to show it, but I actually got 3 people asking me this question after the last session, so I think it will be valuable. They probably aren't the only 3 people at Max that have this question. Maybe 1 or 2 more of you in the room have it. They have an entire show. I'm going to hit the backslash key. And by the way, many of these keyboard shortcuts are going to be in the other decks that you can download from the same location that Jeff and I did. So you'll have all these keyboard shortcuts. So they said, I cut the show. Person came up to me and said, we need to put a soundbite in there and pretend this is a whole show. As a matter of fact, we don't even need to pretend. I'm going to go ahead and have an entire show. Let me go Shift plus. I say these keyboard shortcuts just so they're kind of can flow through your head. I don't expect you to remember all of these now. They've been taught in the other classes. I don't want this to be a repeat of a previous class that has a different name. So here's the situation. They need to go ahead and put a clip in at this point because that's what the client said to do. And they go through and imagine this being a much bigger show, and they're trying to stretch it out, and they don't want this piece, so they have to cut it. They then drag this over. They bring the clip in, drop it in, now they have to close the space. Too much work. I'm going to hit undo, bring this back to where it is. This is called an insert edit. I want to be able to just squeeze something in between at a certain point. So I can go ahead and I can pick a single image. I'm going to arbitrarily use this image here because it really doesn't matter at this point. If I want to put this in There are 3 ways to do it. And I'm going to show you all 3 for a very specific reason. We all have a different style of editing, but it will also make you aware of other things that you can do when I do these dragging or keyboard shortcuts. This is something really cool that a lot of editors don't know about because Adobe put it in and didn't make a lot of flourish, but it's very, very cool, especially if you're used to dragging and dropping. If you have a clip in the left side, inside of your source program, and you are normally bringing it down here to drop it on, that's okay. But if you bring it from the left to the right panel, from your source to your program, you get this pop-up. Now let's see if I can do this and bring my tilde key up. Can't do that. So I'm going to read this so you folks that are in the back can see it. There are multiple sections here. As a matter of fact, there are 6 areas. If I drop it in the middle, which I will ultimately do, it will do an insert edit. I'm going to show you what that does. It actually slices wherever my playhead is, pushes everything downstream, and drops this clip into my timeline when I let go. Okay? So I was able to add that without all those gyrations of lassoing, slicing, dicing, moving, putting it in, closing the space. Really very useful. Let me go ahead and just hit undo because I want to just point out what else is available on that drag and drop. As a matter of fact, there are things that are available by dragging from the left to the right window that are only available in the application by doing this. No keyboard shortcut, no menu, no secret thing where you can change it. If I drag it over here on the top, and I'm going to read these to you because they're very small, this will do an overwrite to the layer above it, okay? And actually, so this is me going blind. Basically, yes, it's overlay. I can't even read anymore. This actually puts it on the track above the target track. I can also use and do a replace edit if I have a clip selected in the timeline. I can do an overwrite, which obliterates what's there. It's traditionally what we do when we drag something on top. And then 2 other edits that you won't find anywhere else, which is insert before the edit point, or where the edit point where the playhead is parked. So if you're not really good at positioning this, if I position this kind of in the middle, a normal insert's going to cut that clip in half. If I drop it off to the left where I insert before or insert after, it will jump to that edit point before it drops that in. And that is really useful so you don't get that dangling little piece of video that flashes up because you were 1 or 2 frames off. As a matter of fact, I dropped it off after, worked beautifully right there. So those are really nice. And I said I was going to show you 3 ways to do it. That's way number 1. And that's important because I showed you a whole bunch of other stuff you can do there. If you're used to dragging things down to the timeline, what happens? I'm going to make this bigger just so you can see it happening easier. You're used to dragging things and dropping something in, and you'll see exactly when you let go, it will overwrite something. So let me just make sure all my audio and videos are lined up. There we go. Those are all spot on. And I will drag this in and drop that. And if I let go of it right here, what's going to happen? It's going to delete everything in that spot. I don't want that. I want to do an insert. Now, what's more important than me showing you this keyboard shortcut is me showing you where to look to find new clues how to be a better editor in Premiere. In the lower left-hand corner, and it's very hard to read on this screen, I'm going to read it to you, are pop-ups that come up all the time depending on what you're doing. And it says right now, drop in track to overwrite. It's telling you what it's going to do. But what's important is the next thing. If I hold down the Command key, it'll enable an insert. Option lets me duplicate a clip. So what it's telling me is if I hold the Command key down, and I want you to see when I click on the Command key, what happens to the interface. You'll see some little triangles appear. All I'm doing is dragging and holding down the Command key, and I see these little triangles, which means when I let go, instead of doing an overwrite, it's going to do an insert. So if you like to just drag things, but you want to do an insert and you don't want to go over to the right, you can drag it down, hold down a modifier key, in this case, Command. There are a lot of different pop-ups that you probably have never seen that are really great little tips in that lower left-hand corner. So that's the second way of doing it, and that's really cool. The third way, which is normally how I do it because I like to use keyboard shortcuts, okay, is my hands are already on JKL, okay? I can jump to different edit points using the up and down arrow keys. Very quick way to jump to an edit point. You'll notice it doesn't jump and stop at every edit point. The reason is it will only stop at the active or the lit tracks, okay? So if I have more tracks lit, it's going to stop at all the lit ones. And we mentioned this in the previous class, but I know there are people that weren't in the previous class. So what I can do is I can make these active. I'm lazy. Instead of just using the up and down arrow keys, if I hold shift and do up and down arrow, it will stop at every edit point, and I will be able to precisely put my playhead where I want that edit to happen. So I use up and down arrow to mark that. Now, instead of dragging this clip all the way down holding a modifier key, directly below J, K, and L are two more keys that are very useful, the comma key and the period key. Think of the comma as a wedge, okay? You can use buttons here. At this point, why use a button if you don't have to? I'm going to point out where it is because it's a nice way to remember the keyboard shortcut. If we look at the little picture, that's an insert edit, that's an overwrite edit. When I hover, it tells me period doesn't overwrite, comma doesn't insert. They're right next to each other. So let me zoom back out. My playhead is positioned. I'm going to hit the comma key. Boom. Insert. Okay? 3 ways to do it. 3 styles of editing, okay, that's going to help you out. You can drag and drop. You can use a menu. You can use the keyboard shortcuts. The truth is, and Jeff and I say this all the time, if you're an editor and you get paid, I don't care how you do it. I just want to help you become faster and more efficient. Useful information? Yes, excellent.
You don't have to use each one of these. Each one of these techniques has a value in different circumstances. What you want to do is start learning the chords so it's easier for you to make music. So each variation allows you to just do things with 1, 2, 3 less steps. And when you think about that multiplied across a year, you suddenly, if I'm saving you 20 to 30 keys a day times a working year, that's 4 to 6 to 8,000 key presses. That's a lot of hidden keys. Everything you can do in one less step, you want to do in one less step.
And that's the whole goal of these classes. And the beautiful thing about Premiere, it's really a rich and deep program. You can always learn something and you find out something really cool, and then they keep adding new stuff, you know, with the Lumetri Color and whatnot and the audio panel. I want to show you the trimming. Now we've got things in. I showed you how to squeeze things in and out. Actually, I get excited. You haven't noticed probably. Talk fast, haven't noticed. I want to show you another really cool trick based upon this with the insert edit. And again, it comes from the questions that people ask me between classes. You're cutting a show, and then you want to cut a new segment. You don't want to just put in an individual clip. You need to put in like a whole new section in the middle of a show. How many times have you had to do, I mean, anybody ever have to do that? Yes. Well, part of this is just so I can see if you are awake and stretching. It's to give you exercise. But a lot of times you want to do that. So what a lot of folks don't realize is that if you have a sequence already built, so maybe you can build this new section as a little sequence, and all of these are sequences, I can tell that, but I don't have to open this up. Let me zoom back out again. If I needed to insert that between these two shots. The up arrow, shift, stops me there. I'll just go ahead and I will grab this thing that says cutaway. It's an entire sequence. If I clicked on it, you see it's multiple clips. All I'm going to do is grab the whole sequence, drag it, and when I get to that spot, let me just make sure I got the thing right. There we go. Drag sequence. Okay, get to that. And I'm going to hold down that same option key, so it's an insert. Come on, be good. Be a good little program. Okay, so dragging this would overwrite, but as soon as I hit down the option key, I'm sorry, it's the command key, too many keys. It does it as an insert, and it brings that in as a nested sequence. So I can go ahead and add something. Now, this is a nested sequence. If I double click on it, I actually can go inside and change it. So sometimes you just may want to bring things together, and that works great. I'm going to undo that. because I'm going to do something different. I'm going to show you a button that you can press to change things. And this is a little button up here that looks like, when you zoomed in, it's hard, I'm too zoomed in. Okay, don't get dizzy, people. It's, I need to zoom all the way out to see the button. There it is, right here. Insert and overwrite sequences as nests or individual clips.
It always looks like a signpost to me.
It looks like a signpost to me too, Jeff. So the signpost, I never disagree with Jeff because green is always right. I'm going to uncheck that. Okay, so now it's white. Now take a look what happens when I drop that segment in, that same segment into the spot. Before it was a whole chunk, which I didn't have control over. If I grab the same thing, bring it in, first of all, do you notice I'm actually seeing individual clips? And then if I hold down my command key, I can do it as an insert. I just inserted all of those clips from the other sequence as individual clips into my other timeline. So now I can merge them together and move things around instead of having these chunks that I have to step into. Cool? Cool. Okay? It's that button there, very useful button. So that's the sequence. So there's basic bringing things in. I want to show you a couple of trimming techniques. I have multiple timelines open, which can get confusing. So we're going to focus and learn a new trick. Okay, this is my trimming sequence. I only want to work with that. Guess what? If I right-click on that, I get an option that says close other timeline panels. So I don't have to individually go and close all the other ones so I know which one I'm working on. Boom. I just simplified my sequence panel, just the one I want. And we're going to work on trimming with this. Spending a good amount of time on trimming, I think it's valuable. It's the thing you do the most when editing. We will get to some of the creative stuff before the 75 minutes are up. So I'm going to show you the finished product, and then I'm going to show you how I got there. So I have these 3 clips thrown into the timeline, which I just threw in pretty fat. And what I ultimately want, well, actually, no, I'm going to show you what it is. And I'm going to go through it a little bit fast forward. So I have the dancer. I want to see her feet moving. I then want to go to a wide shot of the feet moving. So I need to time that right. And then she's going to turn around. Okay? She does it in the wide, does it in the close-up. I just wanted to get the shots into my timeline. And ultimately, what I want to do is I want it to look like this. I'm going to have the foot grabs the audience attention. I see the wide shot. The movement is there. Good timing. She turns. We cut in the middle of a turn. That's what I want to do, and I want to do that fast, taking advantage of the trimming tools that are available in Premiere Pro. So the first thing I may want to do is use one of the skills we've already learned, which is I don't need to see her, swing her foot that many times. Big, big, big thing. That was very generic. No. Here's a really good tip. If you need to cut and you want it to look smooth, cut on motion. Our eye is always drawn to motion, okay? So if you have somebody and they're standing there and then they raise their arm and you have the close-up, wide shot to the close-up, if you have them raise their arm and then cut to the close-up, they'll see the jump because the action has stopped. If while they're moving their hand, you cut to the close-up, our eye won't see it. We just assume that I'm looking at the crowd and then I'm looking at one person. Okay, our brains process it. If you have repeating action, our brain processes. You never want to repeat actions. If I'm already up here and I cut to the close-up down here, you can see that, minute things. The only time you want to do that is if you have 7 different angles of explosions from a Michael Bay film, okay? But generally, you can cut. And here's the cool thing. You don't have to be precise. If I cut here and my close-up, my hand is there, our brains will fill in that gap. You don't need to be that precise. You just do not want to have static shots from wide to close and vice versa, and you don't want to repeat actions between the edits. But you can actually remove some of the motion and people won't notice. So it's a nice thing to know when you're trying to get precision, but you don't want to spend hours to get the exact frame. So I'm going to go ahead, hit the Q key. That will get rid of the head of the shot. Make sure, and if for some reason things aren't working, and in my case it wasn't, it's because I didn't have my active tracks turned on. I just want to point this out. Useful information to file away. The blue buttons on the left side, that is the source. That's for things coming into the timeline and where they're targeted. Why do I have so many? How many people? You've never seen so many, I bet. Usually you have one video and maybe 2, maybe up to 8 audios. But look at that. I have 3 videos. And the reason is the clip that I brought in was a sequence that had a lot of video tracks and a lot of audio tracks. So that's why those are activated. What?
Click the signpost and show them.
When I click the signpost, do you see it goes back to the normal things? Because now it would bring in that sequence as a single video layer and a single audio layer. So you just want to make sure. Now, the reason I bring that up is that the blue areas to the right is what happens once the clip is inside. So this is telling the source, this is telling it where to go and what's getting affected. So if you're trying to do something, Command K, and a track is not blue highlighted, nothing will happen to the video. Okay? So we have some keyboard shortcuts coming in from the right. Breaking news. Okay? If you hit Command 9, I love this guy. Okay? Command 9, it will toggle on and off all of your audio tracks. Okay? He's applauding for his voluntarily doing things. Okay? If you hit Command 0, it will toggle on and off all the video tracks. Very quick way to do it. So those are some nice keyboard shortcuts. And while we're here, what I want to do is go ahead and trim with the Q key, take off the head. And now I'm going to go through, she's swinging her foot, and I want to pick this up where her foot is swinging again. Okay? Technically, I could use the Q key because it will kind of cut it pretty close. I want to show you another way to do things. I want to show you the trimming tools that you have and ways that you can do that. Let me zoom in a second here. So without even changing from my default selection tool, the V key, if I move it to the edge of an edit point, and many of you know this, it turns red and I can grab the edge and pull it. While I'm in here, I want to point out this little triangle. When you see a triangle at the very edge of a clip, it indicates that is the true end of all the media. You have no media left to do any kind of dissolve or anything. So that's what that feedback is. That's why you have the little triangles. As soon as I trim this, you'll see that that goes away, but I have this big hole. And again, I don't like to do things more than once or 3 steps when I can do it in one. Okay, so the traditional trim tool, the red one, is going to leave a gap. That's its first problem. Its second problem is if I need to stretch something out, I want to make this clip longer, I can't because it runs into the wall of the next clip. Premiere is protecting me from throwing things out of sync because maybe way down, if I push this out or overwrote it off screen, there will be a problem. So the default settings are this red trim tool. But there's something called a ripple trim tool, and you can get to that a couple of ways. I want to see if a pop-up works here because that would be very cool. It will re-emphasize something. Okay, it does. So remember I said things are context sensitive for what's happening? If I position it just right in the lower left-hand corner, again, I will read it to you because you probably can't see it. It says, drag the edge to trim the selection. Use Option or Command for other options. And that's where it gets really cool. If I'm doing that, and I go ahead and I hold down the Command or the Option key, I'm holding down the Command key, do you notice how it turns yellow? This is called a ripple trim, and it works very differently. First of all, if I trim to where the playhead is, before when it was just red, it left that big hole, right? Holding down the Command key, getting to the ripple trim tool, which is yellow, I pull it over. As soon as I let go, not only does it do the trim, it closes the gap. So I can do this really quickly. Okay? The other thing that's very, very cool about this, remember the red hits the hard wall? If I hold down the Command key and turn it to a ripple trim tool, I can extend this clip and it will push everything down and I don't have to drag things down and move them. Okay? So the ripple trim tool is really powerful and all you have to do is hold down the modifier key when you're doing it. Good stuff? Okay. How many people would prefer ripple trimming most of the time than just regular trimming? Yeah, exactly. Let's change a preference. I'm going to make the default be a ripple trim. So there's 2 things. One is the Jeff Greenberg, bring it with you.
I call what Abba, the switching to the ripple trim tool, the bring the timeline with me tool, because I understand what I want to do is whether I shorten or lengthen the clip, I want it to bring the timeline with me. And the letter for it is the letter B. And it makes it easy, an easy mnemonic for exactly what I want to do. I don't memorize keyboards. I have a conversation in my head about what I'm doing, and it tells my hands where to go.
So if I don't want to leave it, the default, the selection tool, the V key, will always give me the red one. If I just want to switch to this tool temporarily, by the way, if I hit the bring along with me key, it switches it. I'm going to hit that B key. And you'll see that it now turns into the yellow automatically. So you can do it with the keyboard shortcut. And that's very useful. And Jeff likes to bring things along. And I like to bring Jeff along. So I have that B key. But go back to the selection tool. Go up to Premiere. We'll go to our preferences. And I'm just going to go, not to, you can start from general, but we're ultimately going to get down here to trim. If I click on trim, there is an option I can check, which says allow the selection tool to choose roll and ripple trims without a modifier key. So now the default is the yellow. And if I hold down the modifier key, it is the red. It also will allow me, I'm not going to check this right now because I want to show you what happens when I go between a clip. If I go between a clip, I really can't select it to do what's called a roll edit without switching to a different tool, okay? And I don't like to switch tools if I don't have to, okay? So I'm going to go up here, back to my preferences. I'm going to say, yes, be smart for me. Allow it to select it, okay? And now I'm going to hit OK. I have my same selection tool, the arrow tool, the V key. It's all the same. But now, you notice when I go to the edge, it already is yellow, okay? And I can start trimming it. Now, I'm zoomed in. I want you to see how cool it is when I'm using this tool in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. I want this to cut at the point. You know, I see she's moving her leg. There's the cut there. If I go ahead and click and start dragging on one side, I get a pop-up. I'm seeing the last frame of the first clip and the first frame of the following clip. And because I'm on the right side of the front end, as I move it, I can see precisely where that edit is going to happen when I let go of my mouse. Conversely, if I'm on the left side, I can also see exactly where her foot is. Very easy for me to visually see a precise point where I want the edits to match. Okay? Cool? Got to hear you breathing. It's a long day. I know you're breathing. You got, listen. I'm going to use the same technique and then the roll tool to tweak something. So the magic I want to happen here is I want her to turn, and I want to cut on the turn, okay? First clip's pretty good. She's starting the turn, okay? All I have to do is go down here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so you can see it better, and I'm going to drag it just until I start seeing the turn. And if I overshoot a little, it's okay because our brain will fill in the gap. I'm going to let go, and let's see how well that works. Pretty good, huh? Doesn't have to even be a match. He likes it.
I do.
The roll tool. I want to explain the roll tool and why it is really good. Because I've made that switch in my preferences, now whenever I put my cursor between two edit points and select it, it automatically selects it as a roll tool, which means I can move the out point of the first clip and the in point of the following clip at the same time. I can say exactly when does this happen. So let me zoom back out. So many modifier keys zooming in and out. Ooh, that's...
Flash key.
So edit point. Now, all I'm going to do is move my mouse a little bit. You'll see the upper right-hand corner of the screen will change. Now I'm seeing the last frame of the first one, just like before, and the first frame of the following one. But as I move it, I can say, you know what? When during the turn do I want to see that cut? Maybe it's right when her back is to me, so we start seeing her face. So I'm rolling, you'll see its position, and when I let go, it moves the edit point. Let me zoom in so you can see that a little better. Okay? I'm going to grab it, and when I let go, that's where the new edit point is. Okay, the timing is exactly the same. I added 10 frames to the end of the first clip, took away 10 frames from the second clip. I'm repositioning it, okay, but my rhythm that I've already built has already been established, and there's not a problem. So that's one reason you want to use the roll tool, and this can become very fast. There are keyboard shortcuts for this. I will explode your heads if I start throwing this all out. But there's keyboard shortcuts that you can use to tweak it so it moves left and right a frame at a time or multiple frames, whether you're doing a roll or a ripple trim or even a regular trim. But this is the basis of how I fine-tune my edits as I go through, either using my mouse. And the nice thing here about using the mouse is I get visual feedback. Keyboard, little trickier. But this allows me to be really precise with my edits. And that's a lot of the basics of just refining and trimming your clips. New stuff for most of you, or for some of you? Some new stuff? Good stuff? Okay. The feedback is not, and I appreciate the applause, but it tells me that I'm going in the right direction.
He can't see you because of the lights. If you don't make noise, he doesn't know it's connecting.
I don't even know if you're in the room. I hope you are, but you're quiet. So that's the next thing. So let's take a look at what's on our list next.
Sorry, let's see if I can switch this over.
We'll switch it over. I want to make sure we cover some stuff.
So just so you can see, just for review, Q and W, tops and tails, ripple, previous, next. Bringing the timeline with you. Roll edit, which is the N. Do you want to do extend?
I love this. I'm glad that we have this slide deck because I would have forgotten because, believe it or not, it's like forgetting your favorite child. Oh, we forgot about your birthday, Billy. We'll get it next year. That's why Billy doesn't like me anymore. But
I'm trying to switch back to your system. Give me 1 sec. There you go.
so this is a lot of times when cutting to music. As a matter of fact, I can even do this. I believe I have one where I'm cutting or trimming to music. Let me go ahead. Audio mixing done. Audio mixing, trimming to music. You know, 30 years ago, this text was not too small. A little bit more. I can't even see what I'm doing. Let's bring this full.
Why don't we make the text larger?
We could make the text bigger with the hamburger.
I love this.
He's like, why don't you be smart? He actually said it nice and said, why don't you make the text bigger? And it's like, oh yeah, good idea. And this is a good idea for you guys to know. I use the tilde key to bring this full screen. And you'll see that there is the little drop-down or hamburger menu we've shown. If I click on that, at the very bottom, there's something, or towards the bottom, it says font size, small. Who knows who would use that? Medium, large, extra large. A lot easier to see, for me at least, hopefully for you and hopefully when you're working. So you can just do that when you're inside the panel. Just right-click on that, and now I can see trimming, and I can see trimming to audio, and open that up, and life is so much better now. I've put some markers here on the timeline just because I knew where the beats were that I wanted things to cut. Markers are just the M key. We're not going to go into markers deeply at all. Just know that if I'm playing on my timeline and I hit the M key, it puts a little marker in the timeline so I can put a note or know when I want to do something. If a clip is selected, it actually puts that marker in the clip. But for now, I know this is where I want cuts to happen, and I want to be able to do this quickly with my extend edit because I know where things should happen. The trick is I simply will move my playhead to where the marker is, and if I select an edit point and hit the E key for extend edit, okay, you don't need markers to do this, it just visually it's nicer for you to see. If I hit the E key, it will move that edit point to wherever my playhead is parked. So all I do is select an edit point, position the playhead maybe on a beat of music or wherever I want that to happen. It does a roll edit. Instead of me having to grab it and drag it and position it, I know exactly where I want it to be. Edit is selected, hit the E key, I can do that, okay? The other really cool thing is, you know, if you have an edit selected and use the up and down arrow keys, it jumps and selects the next edit point. So I can very easily, again, that's my edit point selected, hit the E key, and go ahead and get my edits exactly where I want them to be. So the extend edit works really well, very quick shortcut. Okay, so we've done our basic trimming. Let's go ahead and now, I was like, slipping and sliding. I talked about this, and I have a great example for this. To find this, I'm going to just type in the word slip. Oh, look at that. It found my slip and slide edit options. I'm going to go ahead and back that up. So there are times when you're editing that you've done the cut, but the timing might be wrong in the middle shot. I'm going to hit play here. I have her talking, then I'm going to have her dancing. I threw it in. The duration was right, but obviously, did you see I missed the beginning where she's just standing there, okay? So I want to be able to have cut to it when she's already dancing. Well, what a lot of people will do is they'd take the clip, if it's in the timeline, they'd move it up, they'd figure out where the stretch is, they'd bring that over, they'd bring that over, they'd bring it down, they hope it matched, they'd fill in the gap. Don't need to do that. I want to be able to slip the in and the out points simultaneously so that right when she starts to move, which is here, I can move my in point and it will move the out point the equidistance. So I don't have to worry about shots getting too long or too short. I just missed where the action was. I came in too early. Think of it as a window, okay, and a wall. The wall is the clips you don't want to move, and you just want to change what is seen behind the window, where it starts. And so I need to slip that, and there's a keyboard shortcut, and there's a button to do that. And the keyboard shortcut is the Y key. You can actually find it up here on the slip tool. It looks like two little arrows. But if I click the Y key, so I'm changing from my setup, and I position my playhead over that and select it, watch what happens when I start moving my mouse left and right. Look in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. When I start moving it, I see two little icons, or two little images on the left and right. That is the last frame of the first clip and the first frame of the third clip. And all I care about is when does she actually start dancing. So as I'm moving left and right, I can see the first frame that I'm going to cut to. It was here before, but I'm simultaneously moving the in and out point, and as soon as I let go, it's going to slip that clip underneath the other two so that my timing is right. Take a look on the playback. Before she was standing there, now we cut to her while she's dancing. Okay? So I don't have to do lots of moving things around. I just slip it underneath. It's great. It's called a slip edit.
Slippery.
It's a slippery edit. Okay.
It's a Y key.
Why? Why is it so slippery? Jeff is my friend. There's also a slide edit. It's a variation of this, okay? I have it timed perfectly. As a matter of fact, here we go. We cut to it, and it's great. But you know what? I really wish I had cut away to it a little bit sooner, because she's talking about the spinning, the twirling at that point. Okay, so I want to move the whole clip a little bit earlier in my timeline. Okay, and this is great. Maybe you have a reaction shot. You're doing a film about me, and then you cut to somebody in the audience, and they're going, but you want them to do that a little earlier. Same effect will work. Okay, this is called the slide tool. It's the U key. You get to it in the same location as the slip. I do want to point out, if you see a tool with a little arrow there, it means there are more tools underneath. Click and hold. That's the slide tool, the U key. Okay? Slide tool works similarly, too many L's in that. It's like banana. I know how to spell it. I don't know when to stop. You'll get that later. You'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, ha, ha, ha. But I won't be there. So with the slide tool, when I select it, I want to show you full screen, you'll notice the little icons are different. The small ones, which is her spin, I don't want to change the in and out points there. I just want to change where it happens in the timeline. So the big ones are what I'm affecting. Again, the one on the left is the end of the first clip. The one on the right is the beginning of the third clip. If you look closely at my timeline, and actually let me zoom in a little bit with the plus key, I can grab this and move that to the left, okay? What do I see changing? Where she's talking, okay? The top clip, nothing. So I'm sliding this clip down the timeline, and when I play it, we cut to it sooner, but it still is the same spin. U and Y. And if my timing was a little bit off, maybe I wanted that spin to happen earlier, I'll simply go to the Y key, tweak it a little bit on the move, and now the timing's great without me having to move things around and take things to different tracks and slice and dice. Slip and slide, cool stuff? Okay. I like this example. How do you remember which is a slip and which is a slide? The truth is you don't really need to remember by the names as long as it works, but a slip, it's winter, you're walking along, you slip on the ice, your legs go up in the air and your butt falls on the ground. You are physically in the same place, but a different part of your body is touching the ground. That is what a slip does. It stays in place, but a different part of the clip is being seen. Later on, just as graceful, you slide on the ice. Your feet are still touching the ground, but instead of being here, you're there, okay? A slide lets you move a chunk left and right, and it doesn't have to be just one clip. It could actually be a bunch that you select, so they happen earlier or later, but it doesn't affect the entire timing and length of your timeline. So those are really a lot of the trimming techniques that can make things lots and lots and lots faster. Okay. Let's talk about some motion effects, animating things. Okay? So how do you apply a motion effect? And basically, what is a motion effect? I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these clips, and I want something big. So let's go back to our sequence. Again, if you don't see things, it's because you've probably typed something in this box. I'm going to go here, and I want to find one of my still images. I'm going to go ahead and type the word still. And I should have some photographs here. And I'm going to make this big because I want to point out something with photographs and how you can work with clips. If you look here, and let me zoom in a little bit, in one of the vertical lanes, lists, what are these called?
It's metadata columns.
Column. Hard stuff, metadata. I call them columns. Okay, I can see the size of my clips, or the size of my frames. And most of these are 1920 by 1080, the standard high def. I shot some of this ultra high def because I wanted to reposition it. So there's one that's 3840 by 2160. And then I had these odd sizes, and these are photographs that I was given that I needed to put in. So I want to show you what happens when you bring some of these items in to your timeline. So the first thing is, let me go ahead and bring in some of my still images. And here's a great little trick. I can actually lasso a bunch of clips at the same time. Let me go ahead and hit the tilde key. So I have a bunch lassoed. They're all down here. As a matter of fact, if I want, at the end of this timeline, I simply put my playhead. I could drag it. I could do a menu. I'm going to hit the period key. It does overwrite edits and brings them all in. If you recall, these were bigger than 1920 by 1080. As a matter of fact, if we look at that, these were in the thousands, the 3,000, 4,000s. So when I look at these clips in my timeline, and I'm sure this has happened to you, they're really big. I have to scale them down so I can see the image. I could select each of these, open them up in my source monitor, go to the Effects Control tab, go to the Motion tab, and then I could start scaling them down if I wanted to. But that takes a lot of energy. I just want to see the whole picture and then decide if I need to scale it a little bit to do something. So I want to point out that if you select one or multiple clips and right-click on it, you will see an option that says Scale to Frame Size and Set to Frame Size. You don't want scale. You never want to step on the scale. It ruins your day. Okay? You want your day to be set and perfect. Okay? What this does is it will automatically scale it down, and you'll see in the effects control panel the percentage so that the entire image fits within the frame. In the case of photographs, they're not always 16 by 9. So what Premiere will do when you do set to frame size is it will make it so that the entire image is seen. This one is perfectly 16 by 9. It fits great. These other ones came out of the camera. It will show as much of the image as it can. It will show all of the image, and if it needs to do pillar bars, or if it's a different shape and it needs to put on, this is one I didn't do it to, it could also put letterboxing. If I need this to now fill the frame, if I go ahead and click on it and load it into my source monitor, go to my effects control panel, you'll see it has made it 27% of its original size. I can now scale it up if I need to, I'm just clicking and dragging on that. It's a virtual slider, just so it's the edge of the frame. Okay, so I can position things, but the nice thing is I can very quickly make things fit, especially if I'm doing video that is different sizes. And I'm going to go over here. I know I have some 4K footage. I'll type in the word 4K, and I will grab one of my 4K images. There we go. Dancing. These are different cameras. Camera 2, dance 4K. Let's let that. Okay? It's an interview. I shoot my interviews in 4K, even though I'm going to deliver them in 1920 by 1080. Why do I do that? Well, if I bring it in, it automatically comes in 1:1. And that's cool because if I wanted to, I could reframe this. Okay? I can click on this. If you double click on an image, you can move it around. Okay? I could go there. There's my close-up. Don't want to do that. I want the whole image. So what do? Same thing as I did before. Right-click, and I will say set to frame. Now it's a perfect fit. I have my shot. Life is good. Okay, so this is really useful. Is this what I have until I run out? Okay, thank you. So I can go in, I can shoot different sizes. If it's 720, it's going to scale it up. It's going to make it fit. As long as it's 16 by 9, you won't have any problems with edging. If you have old 4:3 footage, 640 by 480. And by the way, some of this is jargon to you guys that are new. 30 years of video, but don't worry, as long as you're getting the concept, don't worry about these numbers and jargons of 640 and 480 and whatnot. So I can go ahead and I have this, and guess what? I want to cut to a close-up. Or I want to cut something out, and I don't want it to be a jump cut. Maybe I need to cut out this section, okay? Let's do something we've already learned. I and O. I need that out, okay? She says something that I didn't need to hear. I'm going to go ahead and do an extract edit. That is our apostrophe key, okay? I've just made a cut. That's great, but look, it's jump cut. Well, I can go back here. Because it's 4K, I have a lot of room to play with, okay? I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to the Effects Control tab. That's where I can change scale and position. You'll look closely. There's a Motion tab. And in the Motion tab, there, it had scaled it down to 50% to make that 4K footage fit. So I can go back here. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to say, let's make that 100% again. Hit the wrong key. It's OK. Hit this, 50%, select it, type in 100, or I could simply do reset. And now, if I want to position it, normally all I have to do is double click. Sometimes if you're working on a layer that's underneath or you can't even see the edges, if you go ahead and you click on this little icon, it will turn on a GUI interface where you can move something around right on screen. You don't have to sit there and worry about these numbers. Okay, you just click on that so it's active. Zoom back out. And now I can reposition this so she's framed nicely. So here's the cut. Wide shot, close up. Maybe we'll move that a little bit so I get a little of the hand movement there, cut on the hand movement. And I've now used a single camera to do a wide shot and a close-up. And I've also used my set to frame size to reposition, to size it, and to reposition it. So that's one way, without movement, of just repositioning an image. I can do the same thing with these photographs if I wanted to. So I did set to frame size. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to reset it. Again, I click on a clip. I can go to the Effects Control panel. It had made it 27%. You can believe me, no need to zoom in. I'm going to simply reset my scale. And the nice thing is, I can go ahead and I can start positioning this so the framing, let me let go of that, of this image is exactly what I want. And as long as I don't go over 100%, that's going to be sharp, okay? My pictures are coming in nice and sharp. So that's pretty cool. That's just basic positioning. A picture, 4K. I could do the reverse thing if I wanted to do picture in picture. Okay, we can take this. I'm going to just drag it on top of the interview. Okay, she's talking about something. This is a full cutaway. What if I want this not to be a cutaway, if I want it to be like a picture in picture over her shoulder? Use the same technique. With the clip selected, I can either double click on it or go over here and click on that little box. You'll notice you'll see little dots around it. This means I'm in the graphical interface to move things around. I can move it around easily. If I grab a corner, I can make it bigger. I can zoom in. Or I can push it and make it smaller. So now I'm going to make it as a picture-in-picture of what she's talking about. I can scale it. So these are all static, but this is great. I can do this with a still. I can do this with video. Okay? And you'll notice as I change this, if you look over into the Motion tab, these numbers have changed. This is now 14% of its original size. This position is over here. So these are static. Okay? This is a static way to position something using motion. But what if I wanted it to change size? What if I either wanted to go to that wide shot in 4K and zoom into a close-up? Pretending I did the zoom at the right spot, I can use these same techniques. Let's go back to that nice wide 4K shot. I'm going to select this area. I'm going to hit delete. And then I'm going to just stretch this out. We have the full shot.
I got to step out for a second.
Okay.
I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff's just going to get
Not leaving.
something. So, wide shot, 4K, scaled it to fit. But I want to zoom in right here as she's going kind of like, she's saying I have to tiptoe quietly. This is how you do it. I like the wide shot. I'm going to double click on this. I want you to look at the effects control panel. It is 50% of its original size, right? Because we made it set to fit. Okay? I want to lock it in that position. I'm going to start doing something called keyframing. So I position my clip exactly how I want the viewer to see it up until that point. And then I'm going to click on these little stopwatches, and that's going to put a little dot here and say, lock it in that position at that point in time. I want to lock my scale. I want to lock my position. That's really all I care about. We're not going to rotate this or anything. We now see two little diamonds. Okay, those are keyframes. So if I go back here, from the beginning of this clip to that point, nothing will happen. Okay, it will stay exactly the same. Let me zoom back out. But at this point, maybe here, I want to be zoomed in to 100%, the close-up. Okay, I can do this a couple of ways. I can simply double-click on it, grab that edge, and I'm going to pull it out, stretch it. Come on, you can. There we go. Position it so it's framed right. And I want you to see what happened over here in the left side. You saw me create the two keyframes here. As soon as I move my playhead and then reposition the clip, it will create new keyframes or new hold spots for this clip. Okay? So what's going to happen from here to here? We're going to zoom in to this shot. I can look over here. I am pushing it a little bit. It's going to about 110% of its original size. The nice thing about video and the way Premiere can upscale something, it's not going to really get blurry. I've actually pushed things to 200% because we're shooting things, as long as you shoot it with, not a camera from 1990. Okay? Important thing. So let me go ahead, bring this back. I want you to watch a couple things as I hit play. I want you to watch the playhead over here as it hits these spots and what happens in the right area. So she's talking, it's static. Now it's getting important. I want the camera to do a nice push in as she's talking. I shot it in 4K. Your phone shoots 4K. I now have a nice, perfect on-camera zoom that I could never have handled with a real little dial because I'm not that good. Okay? Pretty cool? Okay. The zoom is a little bit slower than I want, or it's a little bit faster than I want. You can lasso these keyframes and move them left and right, and you will get to from one to the other one sooner or later. So I'm going to move them closer together. This is going to be faster. The zoom's going to be tighter. I mean, quicker. Notice it's faster now. So the nice thing is not only are you using the keyframes to lock things into certain positions, but you're also able to move them left and right if your timing is off, if it felt too fast. If I wanted this so gradual that the viewer barely even notices I'm pushing in, I create a larger space, and now you'll see it's a much subtler push. okay? It's a great way of being able to move things around. So that's motion using keyframes and positioning things. Same philosophy will apply to a picture if you want to move around a still. And the nice thing about still is you have so much resolution, it's really easy to focus in on certain areas and animate it. We still do call it the Ken Burns effect. And you can do the same thing, whether it's shrinking it or making it bigger. The trick is position. Okay, this is what you have to remember. Position, so that's where the image is, okay? Then you want to press the little clock, okay? So that's keyframe. Okay, so playhead, position, keyframe. And then it will lock it in, move the playhead to a new location, change the position, it will create the keyframes. So if I go over here between these two keyframes and I go, whoa, somebody knocked into the camera, guess what it's going to do? I think I did the motion one. It's zooming in. We have our keyframe. It's just all, yeah, there we go. See, it zooms into the wrong area and then jumps over because I accidentally did this. By the way, to get rid of a keyframe, just right-click on it. Go ahead, hit cut. Life is good. And so that's how you can do motion on an image.
Can I add one really
Absolutely.
sickeningly cool thing? If you've never seen this before, we all know that the icon down, we all know that down here we can change the volume level. Do you see the little FX? If you right-click on it, you can reveal the position or scale information, and by doing so, you can slide and move the keyframes here directly on the timeline, so you can get the timing precise to a piece of audio hit or music. It's one of my favorite little hidden tricks, yeah. You should also know there's a keyboard switch, there's an unmapped one, where you can say, go to next keyframe, go to previous keyframe. And once you map it, you go, why wasn't it on the default keyboard to begin with? Because it allows you to jump from keyframe to keyframe from the keyboard.
I'm going to use the same technique to show you how you can manipulate filters, okay? Because, again, valuable editing tool. So let's say you put a filter on, and I like to either, for demonstrative purposes, that's a big word, use either black and white or the blur because it's easy to see. So I'm going to go, and I want to be able to very quickly get to my effects panel. We've taught this in other classes. I'm going to just throw you the great keyboard shortcut. Shift 7, okay, takes me to my effects tab immediately. And then I can type in the effect I want, and the effect is, let's go black and white. And I hope it is called black and white.
Tint.
Okay. There's the desaturate, maybe. Too many applications. Despill, despeckle, despicable. No, we don't want that one. I'm kidding about that one. Let's type in the word black. And probably a blur would have been a lot quicker. Okay, image control, black and white. Okay. I don't think I can keyframe this one. I'm going to get myself into trouble. I'm going to drop this on. It's a black and white image. You will notice that here, under this effect, yeah, this is an on or off switch. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to do this a cheating way, and then I'm going to use the blur one, which will show you how to animate. If you want to go from color to black and white and do this really easily, and of course, I have to get rid of that. I don't know, I did this. I thought, cut. Okay, get rid of that keyframe. So we're pushing in. So what I can do is, oh, you know what? It would be great if it goes from black and white to color. I can't animate this because there's no little clock. You need to see a little clock to know that you can put a keyframe in.
It's a great example that some effects can't be keyframed.
But you can beat the system, which is what Jeff and I do, except in Vegas, where it beats us. I'm going to cut this in half. What is the way that I can cut this in half if you misspell cut? Command K, okay? Just split the clip in half. I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to apply a default transition, okay? Actually, I just wanted to do it to the video, which is a keyboard. Let me go ahead and undo that. Command Z. Shift D is the default No, it's not, Jeff.
Wow.
Jeff was wrong. He fed me wrong information. Bad man in my ear. Okay. I put a dissolve on there.
Man D. Doesn't
Man D. The dissolve is whatever the default that you set in your preferences, half a second, full second, doesn't really matter. I'm going to grab the very edge of it, stretch it out. So now I have a really long dissolve, and guess what's going to happen? In this dissolve, it's going to go nice and slow from black and white to color so subtly that I forgot that I'm going from black and white to black and white. What do I have to do? Select the second part of the clip. Go ahead, turn off black and white. Okay, so much for, there we go. Now, it'll be a little less subtle. There we go. And there are colors coming in. So I cheated. I didn't show you how to keyframe, but I showed you how to fix a situation where you can keyframe. Okay? Let's go ahead and do that. The last thing I want to do, because it is 4:30, and I apologize, I will have more information on this deck. We're going to bring that up in just a moment. But if I wanted to animate this, I'm going to go ahead, grab it. I'm going to throw the blur on. B-L-U-R. Gaussian blur is what I want. I really should have typed Gaussian. G-A-U-S. Find it. So Gaussian blur, that's the blur you want to use. It's fast, it's efficient, it's your friend. Load this in, and you'll notice here, Gaussian blur, there are little clocks, okay? And all I have to do is zoom out. At the very beginning, I'm going to make this extremely blurry, okay? 400%, and hit the clock. I'm going to go down in a few seconds. I'm going to take that and bring that back to 0. So it's going from blurry, blurry, blurry to in focus. It created 2 keyframes. Watch what happens. This works with any filter that has little stopwatches. Comes into focus. It's too slow. Grab the keyframe, drag it next to it, try that again, boom, play, and in focus. That's how you animate any filter. You can put keyframes in, move them around. If you don't like it, right-click and delete it. If you don't see the clock, a lot of times just a cut and a dissolve between the two will get you your effect. It is 4:30. I want to bring up the screen for how you can get a copy of the deck. Also, all the decks that Jeff and I have used for this show. Okay, so go to this bit.ly thing. We both consult with you. We will both answer questions throughout the week. Appreciate it. I went a couple minutes over. So much to learn about Premiere. Please come to our other classes if you haven't done it. Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy Max. Fill out the survey so we get to eat cake and cookies. Okay, if you have any questions, you can come on up. I think there's nobody in the room after.